Hey there, outliers. Y'all got me thinking about putting on like some kind of theme song. I could hear something playing out like a 90s theme song in the mix. But until that moment, I want to just go ahead and say hello once again. My name is Niiamah Shang, and thank you so much for listening to the Outliers Edge podcast on the Outliers Edge podcast network. We here in this conversation really focus on bringing forth people who are game-changing leaders and entrepreneurs who create possibilities through who they are being. And we showcase that. So create more space for you to gain additional tools, but also just additional insights for yourself to step into the contributions that you are here to make on this planet. We have one such outlier with us right now who I am thoroughly excited to share and bring to you all here, outliers. It's Michelle Pualani. Michelle, it is. Thank you. Just thank you for being you, and thank you for creating the space and time to be with us here today. How are you doing today?
Hi, Niiamah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm excited for life as we know it. There have been a lot of transformations, a lot of changes, a lot of big shifts that I know that I've been going through. And so I think this conversation is coming at a very pivotal time in how we're expanding, how we're growing, and what we're going to talk about today will certainly serve those listening and move beyond just you and I and our networks.
This is great. We're gonna play that game here. Michelle, I like to start off each conversation just grounding myself in. Earlier here when we were connected, I shared some bit about how you've been showing up for me. If you're good, I'd like to do it again, but honestly, I can't share the same thing because it just wouldn't feel genuine. So I have to like be here in the moment and see what's real. Would you open to me sharing the impact that you have? You're getting a 2 for 1 today.
Absolutely. I love hearing it.
All right, cool. Uh, Michelle, I think the place that I'm coming from right now in this moment is that like I do consider you a real one. One of the things that like strikes me about you is that like I feel that you choose to play your game in like an open book way. And what I mean by that is not just like you're open overall and or like incredibly vulnerable, which like all those things live there. But I feel that like there's nothing to hide with you. Like you want people to be able to see reality as it is. I think that part right there is really huge. I had a conversation with someone today, which opened up a lot of vulnerability within me. And through it, we came to a place where it's like, yes, you love spending time with visionary leaders, but it's easy to spend time with them in their vision. The place that I feel like you are craving now is to spend time with people who are like visionary leaders in the reality of what they're doing. The future will be great, but right now, how awesome is it? And what is the next step you need to take in this moment? And when I think about you and the way that you have shown up for us and on the conversations that we've had so far, you live that huge, massive vision, but you're also rooted into what is happening right now and what is the reality of what I see here and how can I help others move forward in a similar fashion. That to me is it's something I treasure. And so I want to let you know, thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing you to the table. And we'll expand upon that here. But like that dose of reality is sorely, sorely desired and appreciated.
Thank you, Niyama. Well, I think that so much of our lives is honestly a chaotic mess.
Mm.
We always have life going on. We always have things happening to us. We always have these circumstances, these people, these environments, these opportunities that can feel like a lot. And as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as outliers, we have a vision and we often hold that vision so strongly. We know where we're headed. We have this idea, this concept, this transformation, this outcome that we're working toward, this person that we're becoming, this way in which we want to be and show up differently. But the vision is only part of the process. And like you said, the reality, the here, the now, the self awareness of the change and the behavior and the model of who you're being now is eventually how you're going to get to what it is that you're becoming or what it is that you're working towards or the transformation, that outcome. And so, yes, we have to hold the vision. And yes, we have to be future thinking in that way. But we also have to embody what's happening in the here and now, because that's the only place in which we can make change, the only place in which we can take action. And so I've had to get really, really brutally honest with myself about where I am, about where I want to go, and how I can then change, shift, transform, grow, and evolve through the process. And honestly, that took embodying the mess of my reality and the circumstances. And again, just kind of looking at myself in the mirror, metaphorically and physically, to really understand where I am, have that self awareness, hold compassion for what that looks like, and then also be able to change and transform through the process in order to take the steps forward, in order to reach the goals, in order to do the things that I've wanted to do, and kind of hold that vision as I actively take part in the now and the reality of what's happening. And I think just being transparent about it. Like, I feel like I'm that kind of person who just wants to wear their heart on their sleeve and also let people know that it's okay. Like you were just mentioning that lack of perfection. It's okay to demonstrate that we're still figuring it out. It's okay to demonstrate that things are a little bit of a mess and I'm still doing it anyway. And you can still do it too. And it's giving each other permission that it's an evolution, it's a journey, and it's not some perfect destination. And we have it all figured out all the time, you know?
I do. And as you're saying it, like I feel like I know it a little too well, and I like to play in that. There's the component of the mess is actually really appealing to me right now. So like to the extent that we can have this be a messy space here, knowing that we all know what we're up to, right? Like we are I think there's a difference between being like dirty and being untidy, like messiness comes with the growth process. And at the core of this here is a lot of growth, right? And so I appreciate you even just talking about that to start out with, because I think it gives us a chance to be polished and unpolished at the same time and to walk into uncharted territories. All right. Let's do ourselves a favor here, because since the door of the messiness has been open, I'm not sure how we'll walk through it, but like it's open, it's there. We might crawl through the window or whatnot. But I think it'd be really good to give people a chance to actually see, like, hey, by the way, like your house is in order. We're going to talk about some elements here that give us a space to go in here, but like you give us a chance to get some context of you, like who you are, what you've been creating, and really give us. I really do use the word context like strongly here, because I'm like I got to meet with people who I want them to get to know you, and like why we are really allowing ourselves to dive into some of the less tangible areas so that we can really play this game.
So I started in health and fitness, and my experience was all about teaching, coaching, working with students and clients in really bettering themselves from a physical perspective. And naturally, that evolved and grew into personal development, healthy habit formation, and behavior change as kind of a model. So that was kind of my foundation when it came to teaching, coaching at a local level. And I always thought that that was what I was going to do full time and forever, that that was going to be my career, was kind of that kinesiology, physical movement, functional fitness training model. And then I sort of reached the top of my local area at the most expensive, most highly sought out kind of gym. And I realized that wasn't what I wanted. So then I started to pivot. Okay, let's launch into the online space. So I started launching online digital products, programs, bringing on health coaching clients, doing presentations for corporations, doing retreats for nonprofit organizations. And I kind of went in a lot of different directions to kind of try to figure out what exactly that model looked like. Can't say I nailed it, because I got to a point where I felt like what I was doing wasn't working. And this is a lesson I learned too late, was that all of those failures were actually incredible successes, but I embodied and internalized them as failures and that things weren't working. So looking back with time, with reflection, it's really truly given me the opportunity and the perspective to know that actually those were successes and they were just a part of that learning process. Needless to say, through that, I started doing marketing and business consulting. It kind of came about naturally because I was doing this online model and people started asking, how are you doing it? How are you creating the content? What are you doing to make money? Like all of those kinds of things. And so I kind of naturally segued into that, really created a referral business. So I wasn't doing marketing. I didn't create a new business structure. I didn't even have an online presence that reflected the business and marketing consulting, but was working with clients in that capacity. And then 180, kind of out of nowhere, but we can get more into the background story of this. Over the past year, we actually launched a physical product business. So we have developed and designed a non-alcoholic hemp-infused spirit alternative because I stopped drinking a couple of years ago. And we have launched that as To Be Honest Beverage Company. So at this point in time, I have kind of three different brands that I monitor and run, one of which is the business and marketing side, which has become more of a presence that I'm really working on honing in. The physical fitness business has turned into more healthy habit formation and high performance for CEOs, business owners, and kind of high achieving professionals. And then, of course, the physical product business, which is at that kind of like well-being wellness level of a CBD infused product that ultimately replaces the alcohol or liquor in a mocktail or cocktail. So I've kind of got these silos of the things that I'm focusing on and building them somewhat simultaneously, which I know is not what anyone suggests, but I'm kind of figuring that model out as I go. And I really am enjoying what I'm doing and kind of in this process of iterating and figuring out what that clear offer is, really honing in on the messaging and the marketing and just kind of building the presence in each of those avenues. So that's kind of the context of where I've been, how I've got to where I am now, and what my focus is, and how I'm kind of using, my time, my energy, my resources in order to get these brands some leverage and get out in front of people and actually just like really clarify that offer and how I help and support.
So, Michelle, there's something in here. Thank you. It's cool hearing the three different things you have going on. I didn't know the last one I didn't know about. Um, there's something I feel like we need to bring into the conversation to come sit alongside us. It's not going to have a voice, but it's actually it's been voiced many times, and that's the you talk about being embodied. Like you talk about embodied failure, like you really embodying like things right now. And I feel like that I'd like to give more space and room to that right now. I would love to hear from you what that translates to. I get the sense that there was that in the course of in the course of your journey, you've gone on an embodiment journey. Just like to just give a little bit of space to that. Tell me a little bit about that. Uh, what does it mean for you? What it like, and then how has it impacted things along the way?
So, transparently, I have been in talk therapy for about 5 to 6 years. And there are a lot of things that I really truly believe in that I know we won't be able to talk about fully today in terms of spiritual healing and emotional healing and dealing with trauma and moving through your own process to kind of rediscover who you are at your core and get rid of a lot of the programming that was handed to you from your environment, from your upbringing in terms of family, friends, the structure of what you were exposed to. And I had been dealing with anxiety and I had been dealing with a lot of things that were kind of keeping me in the procrastination mode, in the avoidance mode, and kind of putting me in a place of what felt like limitation. And through that process, I have had to realize that my mode of operations has always been kind of like overly controlling, overly perfectionist, overly, this is how things have to be because I'm the responsible one and I have to hold all of the weight and I'm taking on everybody else's things and I don't have any healthy boundaries and I'm not actually practicing what I preach. And so I got to a point in which, I don't know if you've heard the term before, but head, heart, and hands wasn't in alignment. And so even though I knew a lot of these things consciously, and even when it came to my business, my products, my programs, in terms of what I was preaching and what I believed to be true, I wasn't necessarily what I would say embodying. I wasn't living them fully. I wasn't feeling them. I didn't have the energetic attunement to what those things were. And so that's what I mean when I use the term embodiment is that we may know something consciously, or maybe we read it in a book, or maybe we heard it on a podcast, or maybe we have even taught it to other people before, but we're not living that on a daily, moment by moment, consistent basis. And so, as an example, what I felt like I preached a lot and talked a lot about was this self care. Self care, do these practices, take care of yourself when it comes to physical, mental, emotional health. And I was technically doing those things, but I was doing them more in the mode of checking them off a list. Okay, I worked out today. Okay, I had the right nutrition. Okay, I was getting enough sleep. Okay, I was taking time for myself. I was doing all of these things. But I actually lacked a lot of self compassion because I realized that my internal narrative, my self talk, was negative all the time. And so, even though I was doing these activities on a regular and consistent basis, I was then berating myself, or I was shaming myself, or I was feeling guilty about this, that, or the other thing. And so internally, I was just kind of constantly telling myself it wasn't enough. Again, the success and the failure piece. I would look at what I was doing. It wasn't enough. It wasn't big enough. I didn't have enough reach. It wasn't the right impact. And I was just internalizing all of these things and making them bad about myself, making them wrong about myself, making them mean something more than what it was. And I couldn't have that healthy separation, that healthy boundary, and that perspective to say that, oh, no, that was circumstantial, or I'm in control and I'm in charge of this actually, or I can think about this differently, or I can approach this in a more thoughtful way. I was really, really not practicing self compassion. And so I realized that head, heart, and hands is that, yeah, I was actively moving my hands and consciously I was telling myself, oh, I'm doing all of these things. But from a heart perspective, from an emotional perspective, from an actual way of I was treating myself, I was embodying, these energies and these things, it just wasn't happening. And so that's what that embodiment piece is, that I feel like I've learned so much in that arena, in being able to energetically align and attune myself to what I feel like I consciously know or am practicing to be the emotional feeling side of it as well.
Yeah, as you say this, it hits me. I haven't heard about the embodiment through I've heard of like head, heart, and hands, but I haven't heard about that as like a way of looking at what does embodiment look like. It takes me actually to a part for myself where I do business, but I'm at my heart I feel like I'm a movement leader. I'm like a true move. Like I'm like that is what gets me up. That's what moves me. I'm like let's build a movement. But I also want to fund my life, and I also know that bringing in more money can also make the movement bigger, better, broader, deeper, more impactful, so forth. And what was happening right now is there was like you're catching me at a time. It's very specific part of the time where I feel like the heads gets it. I'm like, I'm a movement leader. Get it. The hands are like, let's go create podcasts, let's go bring people, let's go serve, so on and so forth. But there's this inner part of the heart and soul that's like something's off, something's missing, something like that part is out of alignment. And so as you bring this in here, I appreciate it because I'm like, oh, this is it. It opens up a pathway to actually go and be like, oh, let's bring it into alignment. Like this now becomes like, oh, out of all the things, it's not about what I say. I can say this to the moon. I can actually take the actions. But if I'm out of emotional alignment and attunement toward that movement leader element, something's going to go off, and that resonates much stronger than the other components of like business leader. I feel like I can get into business like it's doable, but it's almost like I want to run the business of a movement more than anything else, you know. So I appreciate that, and it really feels when you bring this up, it takes me straight to that, which is what I'm experiencing right now in the present, and it reminds me of when I started this business, and I was Niiamah Ashang, and the business was all about authenticity and being all of you, and so on and so forth. But I was going about with everything with a nickname, and it felt like me, but it's like no, I wasn't actually in alignment. Like choosing to be Niiamah and doing all the same things was just a completely different person, you know. And so I appreciate you bringing this in here. And not lies, I'm going to invite you the head, heart, and hands. Right? I know you're taking action. I know you're thinking about things. I know you're bringing things into play. Where out of those three feel out of alignment for you? And what can you do now to start going down the journey to start bringing those things more into alignment? Michelle, before we go any further, is there anything else you want to expand upon with this?
I think that's where the authenticity piece comes in. You use that term, and I think it gets thrown around a lot, unfortunately, and people tend to discount it in terms of being authentic, or you have to show up with authenticity. But we don't always realize or know what that actually means or what it looks like. And so when you're creating personal brand, when you're creating a business, when you're actually thinking about how you're leading, how you're showing up, when you're creating a movement, there needs to be some sort of alignment, attunement, authenticity to how you're visioning and how you're acting and how you're being, right? Like the be do have model. You want all of those pieces to be at play. And so often we get caught up in the daily activities. So often we get actually caught up in the goal that we forget the why, the intention, and the like what we created this for in the first place. And so I think that takes coming back to the drawing board. It takes coming back to yourself and how you're fulfilling your purpose, your dharma, and how that fits into the business model or the activity or the work that it is that you're doing. So I think it just takes a little reflection and finding that authenticity, finding that voice. And I feel like for a lot of people, once they unlock that, once they actually have that like key in place, that's when things tend to take off. That's when the exponential growth happens, is because they've found that alignment.
All right, so now I want to talk to you, Michelle, because like I feel like I would love to get into the space of like the belief element too, right? We were talking before we came in here around um at the time of this year, we're about halfway through the year at the time that we're recording this conversation. There may be people who are in different stages with, if we're talking about the goals that they were going for and such, like that may be in different stages of bringing that out to life, right? I like to give some space to that because it happens to be right now we're looking at this through like the halfway through the year lens, but this can be applicable anytime. Yeah, like I have a goal and it hasn't yet been reached. I think before we get into like the topic of it, because I actually really enjoyed like talking to you about your experience around it, and like how you navigate it. Um, I guess the first place that really comes to me is around the word belief just keeps showing up, right? Like, okay, like where does this sit for you when you found yourself either in the space where it's like okay before you had the alignment and attunement and then you got into alignment and attunement and you're like I still have these goals and I still like they're not here yet. I would love to like just like hear about your experience within some of the things that you have to like help outliers that might be in a similar situation.
Belief is such a strong word that we don't give enough credit to. I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso, but it's like, one of the running through lines and the themes of believing in your own ability, believing in the team's ability, believing in what it is that you're even working on or the goal in the first place. So we can chat a little bit more about goals as a whole. And yes, as we head into this like half of the year, a lot of us are getting to this point where it's like, wait, where did the first 6 months go? Am I closer to my goals? Am I hitting my milestones? Am I even in the right ballpark or the right direction in the first place? Did I get distracted with this new opportunity or this different thing that took me off course? And so there's a lot we can talk about it with goals. And that kind of comes from my behavior change background in goal stepping and milestones and being able to help people accomplish that from a health and a lifestyle perspective. But that behavior change and that model applies directly to business or work because it's how we approach habit formation. It's how we approach our systems. It's how we approach our day, our schedule, our routines as a whole. But backpedaling a little bit to this idea and this concept of belief is that when I feel like I launched in the online space, I was taking something that was in person that had demonstrated success and that I had felt like I was like, quote unquote, at the top of my game with. But when I launched into the online space, it was a model, an industry that I didn't know and wasn't familiar with. And when I was looking at examples, which I'm grateful that there are people who have paved the path that have demonstrated their success and said, hey, you can do this too. But when they're talking about like large launch figures, what they've been able to accomplish, how much they're making on a monthly basis, that can be really deceiving when you're getting started and you don't have the audience yet and you don't have the understanding yet and you really don't understand the metrics of what it is that you're doing or just what you're doing in general because it's a whole new thing and you have to learn those systems and you have to learn that process and you have to experiment and possibly what works for them doesn't necessarily work for you. So instead of looking at it again from that sort of like neutral lens and that perspective, it was all about belief because I lacked it. And I lacked the belief in myself because I was in a new field. I was in a new thing that I didn't fully understand or get. And so instead of saying, oh, I'm going to tweak my marketing or my messaging or the offer, or I'm going to try this avenue, or I'm going to reach out to this prospective partner and collaborate and leverage their audience because I'm confident in what I was doing. I lacked the belief, I lacked the confidence in my products and programs. And so I made it all about that. I guess no one wants to work with me. I suppose this product isn't good enough. I need to go back to the drawing board. I need to reiterate. I need to do it again. I don't think that this is working and it has to do something with me instead of the system or the model. And so I feel like belief is such an underlying piece of the foundation of our lives and the foundation of our success, because ultimately we're made up of beliefs. We believe in gravity, and so we act accordingly with gravity. We believe that the sun will come up tomorrow. We believe that I can communicate with people via my phone or via a computer or social media. We have these assumed beliefs. We have our subconscious beliefs. We have these things that we're aware of that are belief systems, but ultimately they make up our lives. They make up our decisions. They limit us or they expand us. They open up opportunities or they close doors. And so this belief piece is what I feel like. And as just a little background, I was a philosophy major. So the idea of how we understand the world is so much a part of how I approach my life in general. And when it comes to belief, you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in the modalities in which you're approaching what it is that you're doing. Otherwise, everything else will crumble because you're always going to second guess. You're always going to doubt. You're going to have the insecurity and the fear that comes about as a part of that process.
Yeah, I appreciate this, Michelle. I want to stay with this for a little while here because I think um it's there's a component of it that can feel high level. And at the same time, like as I'm listening and living in it, I recognize the difference here, the difference between especially if you're talking to outliers, right? A lot of us just like we do things not because it was hard or like we do it because we knew we could do it. You know, I talk to you and I hear you like and you like you know that you can run these three businesses and make them like and make each brand successful and you're doing the work associated with you like you're like I feel like that belief is associated with it. Like I don't think you don't just jump into it because someone came up with a cool idea one day. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Like I don't like you're past that part, you know. Like I don't know if that was ever you, but like I get that you're on the other side of that regardless of where you started. There's there are a few things that came up with belief right now that really felt like that shook me. Right. The first one here is around something, and let me know if I misinterpreted it. But it was when you're listing out like some of the ways that people were thinking of like internalizing the like what they were seeing externally. What came for me was this general sense of like it's not that we feel like it isn't working. If we feel more like we aren't working. You know, I'm taken to a mastermind I was a part of where I was allowed. I found myself allowed. I really said that, but that's that's the truth. I felt like I was allowed, and there was room in that space for me to be angry. I remember getting angry in that group of people as part of that was the actual embodiment. That was like my heart work of allowing that to come in, where I'm like, I can also be angry and not be shunned, right? And the I was like, why don't you understand me? I'm in a room with witches and like, you know, like shamans and there's all this stuff here. And I'm like, but I'm not understood that I'm just trying to make a movement. You know, like this feels really tangible. And someone came to me afterwards and she's like, I think I'm noticing that you're getting really upset about this. I think what's happened is that you think that because we don't understand what you're saying, we don't understand you. We get you. But like what you're doing is you're exiting the conversation. You know, rather than staying in the game. I didn't, and she had to tell me this is like I'm paraphrasing here, but we had to have a conversation. Be like, I don't know how to do what you're saying. I don't know. Like I don't. It's so different to me what you're asking. She's like, you don't ask. What about this didn't you understand? So that you can then, oh, okay, well, this is what I meant. How would you say that so that it would be understood if I needed to come and tell it to you or to someone else later on? And I think if I'm getting you right, some of that element of like that really hit me when you were talking about like how we interpret what's happening externally. So would you mind speaking to that? Let me know if I accidentally veered off course from what you were where you were. And let's just build off that.
Not at all. I think you're completely on point with the internalizing of what you're seeing happen externally. My mentors, I feel like, talk about this a lot in the online space. And this is part of the embodiment pieces. Again, you can hear it over and over and over again, but you might not be ready for it. You might not have the experience, the assimilation, the point in your path in which you are able to absorb it and then practice it. And it just might not even land, right? It might just go over your head for the time being, and that's okay. So, what we're communicating here as you're listening to this is reflecting all those times in which you made it about you when it wasn't at all. And that's that point of being neutral and sustaining the belief anyway. So, any of our best success stories, if you look at entrepreneurship, because I'm in the business world, so I know that there are a lot of high achieving professionals when it comes to the corporate world, but I'm just not as familiar with that space. So I look at a lot of startups, right? I look at a lot of businesses who have reached incredible success. And a lot of their stories start with failure, right? Getting an idea out there into the world, being told no, 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 not getting the capital that they needed or felt like they had to get started, not getting the responses, not getting the reception from people, people not understanding what the concept or the vision was even in the first place. But it didn't matter because they sustained the belief in what it is that they were building. They saw the bigger picture. They had the vision and they held strong to that and they believed in themselves and they believed in the mission, the movement, what it is that they were bringing to the world. So, independent of the circumstances, the external environment that was telling them no, 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 they were able to keep moving forward. And there are two pieces here, right? Because you want to pay attention to feedback because there is a certain sense of market research, putting things out there, listening to customers and paying attention to what you're getting back from the world and paying attention to those analytics and those metrics. And there's a lot to be said about that. But when it comes to what you know to be true, what you believe to be the case, and what you're bringing to the world, there's going to be a lot of external narratives, and there's going to be a lot of no's that you encounter, or there's going to be a lot of failures as a part of your process that you're going to have to learn how to be resilient with. And that's how you have to differentiate between like, what is the negative self talk that you're creating for yourself that's just like, nagging at you that you have to be able to create that boundary and build that resilience for. And then also, what is that external feedback, that negative feedback that you're getting that you're going to learn to move past or through because you are holding this strength in the belief or the vision or whatever it is that you're working toward and being able to kind of navigate that. So you have the internal, you have the external, and you're really figuring out what it is that you're bringing to the table and continuing to move forward independent of what's happening externally and of guess that negative piece internally as well.
Yeah, outliers. You could tell. I haven't talked to y'all in a bit here. You can tell that like I'm deeply enwrapped with this conversation here, Michelle. I appreciate the way that your mind works. I appreciate the way that you choose to express things. I see the intention that you use in your communication, and that intention also clearly comes from not just like the learned educational experience, but the actual lived experience. Like it feels like embodied teaching, and being in space with you there. Allies, I am going to make an invitation for you here, which is like Michelle and I have been talking. I feel that there's someone in your world right now who would benefit from hearing the messages that we've been sharing right now, hearing the way that Michelle takes a look at life, being able to see how things are broken down, and really walking even through the head, heart, and hands journey, as well as the belief there. If there's someone right now in your world who you believe would really benefit from hearing this conversation, my ask that you take the time, pause this, and just share it with them. Just send them a link, give them a chance to benefit from this share here. I right now, I'm like, had about insight in this conversation here, and I recognize that for us outliers out there, there are people that we care about where we might actually even see this taking place, but we don't know how to express it. We've lived it. We might be like there are elements here, and I think Michelle, you're exceptional in being able to language what is taking place in our everyday life and like actually help like contextualize that and take it out of conceptual but like contextualize it and turn it into like meaningful frameworks and formations that we can continue to use onwards. So outliers, I'm going to go back to Michelle in a bit, but think about that person, send them the link, and then we'll continue on with the conversation. Yeah, Michelle, I've been feeling the call through this year. I'm like, people need to know this. They don't even need to know this, but I just think it just really benefit someone. I'm like, let's not hold back. Let's not hold that back. Um, oof, you got a lot of skills. You got a lot of skills. You got a lot of things that work for you. And so I feel myself in this moment being like, I want to tap into it all. I also want to give us a chance to be able to gracefully end our conversation. So let me check in with you. You had mentioned some things around some being halfway through the year and being able to kind of like know how to like move forward with goals and such. Uh, it might make sense for us to tap into that right now. I don't know if we could, like, if you have a few minutes, we can go into that. But if it's going to take a bit, let's give outliers a chance to. We'll give them a resource, or bring you back on or something to expand on that, and instead just like give ourselves the space and time to close off graciously. Let me just check in with you here when it comes to that part of the conversation, knowing what you know, around what you know about it. Is this something we should continue talking about right now, or is it something we might want to have like either a part two or maybe a resource to help out with that?
I think tactically, the conversation about goals and milestones and the actions and the activities that you're doing on a consistent basis in order to get you there and doing it in a way that's aligned and authentic to you, as opposed to just trying to follow someone else's model that maybe doesn't fit or doesn't feel great in the way that you're executing. That I think takes a longer conversation. And we should definitely try to come back at some point, Niiamah, I think. But for me, I think in terms of the goals and that conversation of reflection, because for me, there's so much self-awareness and there's so much reflection that comes with our lives and how we're making different choices and how we're changing our behavior and how we're actually reaching our goals in the first place. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how you're going to be able to change it or get anything different out of what you're working toward, right? Like you have to have that self-reflection piece. You have to have that self-awareness piece. And knowing that you can identify and acknowledge where you are, but not be hard on yourself. We've talked a little bit about the negative self-talk. We've talked about the doubt. We've talked about the belief. We've talked about aligning and embodying. And as you're heading into the second part of the year, there may be goals that you haven't reached yet. There may be opportunities that you feel like you quote unquote missed out on, or failures that you feel like you've already met thus far. And I just want to encourage you to think about what it takes to actually get that like upswing momentum, that exponential growth. And if again, you look back at our biggest, most successful case studies in terms of large scale businesses, one of the ones which, we have this theme of belief is Jamie Kern Lima. She was the founder of It Cosmetics, which sold for over $1 billion. She received so many no's through the process. Her first book, because she's created her own personal brand around her success and what she does now in terms of keynote speaking and books and podcast interviews, and she has some programs and some courses available. But what she essentially teaches is that you sustain that belief and you have to keep going. You have to keep moving forward. You have to keep the momentum moving. You have to take action independent of what has been done, said, or received in the past. So you may have failures under your belt. You may have goals that you haven't reached, but that doesn't determine your continued success or future opportunities. And so as you move into this latter part of the year, there is like, I forget what they call it, but it's like a curve, right? Where you're going, and then, oh, it's a hockey stick. And it's where that kind of like uptick happens, and then things happen exponentially. It's when you start to really see the traction. But what you don't hear about always is everything that it took to get to that point. All of the steps that you took that seemed like they didn't matter, all of the failures that you encountered along the way that seemed like you were going in the wrong direction. All of that like work that you just consistently and timelessly like put in as you were learning and growing through the process. So sometimes there's that incubation phase that has to happen in order for that exponential growth to take off. So the worst thing that you can do is quit. That is the absolute like epitome of failure, right? And I'll say that with actually like a grain of salt, because sometimes quitting is the right thing and sometimes just like walking away is okay and doing something differently. But if you really do believe, and if you have this embodiment and alignment and attunement to what it is that you're doing, and the head, heart, and hands are working together, then it's just a matter of time. Like you just have to shift the expectation and the time horizon of what you think is possible. And you never know when that thing is going to take off. And so just continuing to reflect, to have that self awareness piece, to be envisioning what it is that you're looking for, but grounded in the reality of the now, knowing that you can take that change, that action in the here and now. And that's all that matters in the present. Just keep moving forward, keep the momentum going, and continue to drive.
Well, I feel like that's a place for us to like drive ourselves to the end of this conversation. I appreciate you, Michelle. Thank you so much for being you. I want to conclude here with just a few questions. The first one here is for anyone that wants to go deeper into the journey with you. What are the best ways for them to do it?
Absolutely. I have a few different options based on the different brands, but I'll just give you one so it's nice and simple. You can find me at the Michelle Pualani on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. So it's Michelle with two L's, and then Pualani, Pualani. And you can just reach out, send me a DM, respond to a story, let me know that you listened to this conversation, take a screenshot, tag me, and we'll continue a conversation there. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. I also conduct initial audit sessions and strategies for kind of where you are, whether that's in life with your schedule and how you're spending your time and you want to change some behavior, or whether that is with your digital marketing, your online assets, and how you're getting out into the world in terms of brand and marketing.
That's fantastic. I appreciate you because I think you bring completion to the mix. Like you're not messing around. Like you're like, all right, let's if we're gonna do this, let's do this, you know. So let's just I thoroughly enjoy that. I like to ask each people two last questions, right? Each person that comes on. The first one is like for you yourself as you were going through here, what insights did you have? What if anything did you remember as a result of being on here? And the answer could be nothing, and that's totally fine as well. But I'd like to give space to that. Is there any insight that you'd like to share?
For me, it's actually a point of credibility and ownership. Like we're
Mm.
talking about this belief concept, but I've spent so much time, I think, questioning my ability to be somewhere, whether I had the permission to be there, whether I was qualified enough to be there, whether I could reach out to that person to be on their podcast, or whether I could pitch myself as a speaker for this event. I've spent a lot of time, I think, questioning the credibility and the authority that I actually have held. And I think that's been a point of shifting for me. And doing opportunities like this has just solidified that, where it makes me feel more confident in what I have to offer and what I want to talk about. And even if someone is listening and is like, well, I don't think she's super credible or has the authority, I feel like I enjoy this process and I feel passionate and I have interest in it. So whether it's now or a month from now or 6 years from now, I'm going to continuously get better and improve along the process. And I think we think so often that we have to be the best in order to do the thing. And it's just not true. It's like everybody starts somewhere, and where they started is not what you're seeing today. But if they didn't get started at that smaller stage or at that like initial going, then they wouldn't be as successful and accomplished as they are now. And we don't give ourselves enough of a runway or enough of an opportunity to be bad, to be quote unquote cringe, to allow ourselves to just muck things up a bit, and embody that chaos or that mess or whatever that looks like for you along the journey. And so I think that that's what I'm taking away from today is like, yeah, it's going to iterate differently. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but that's not super important. And if I care about something, if I'm passionate about it, and if I'm holding the vision for myself, then I'm going to continue to take action along the journey and through the process instead of doubting myself, instead of feeling insecure about it or feeling like, oh, not yet because I don't have enough experience, or oh, not yet because of this made up reason, because that's all internal.
Yeah. I am so grateful for you. I'm going to end it with the last question here, which is what we call the time capsule question. It's a simple question. If you had to leave a message for yourself that you wouldn't listen to for another 10 years, but 10 years later, it's a message that you would like hear and be like, oh, thank you for the wisdom, me. What's the message you would leave for yourself uh, that to remind yourself in 10 years' time?
For me, it's that you knew that this was going to happen. Like when you have that futuristic thinking strength, when you have that visioning strength, when you have a very clear concept of where you want to go, even if you're leaving the how up for the universe to take liberties, we'll say, is that you knew that this was going to happen. You knew that this was going to be the case. You knew, mind, body, and soul in your heart of hearts that this was always inevitable. And you got there. And it doesn't matter really which direction it takes. And there are a lot of things that can come up along the way. But realistically, I think that if I were to reflect 10 years from now, it would just be that, like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been working toward. This is who I've been becoming. And this is always going to be what it was. And you did it. And I don't even think it's that deep, but it's just this ownership of, this is it. And then, 10 years from now, same thing, like, oh, you knew that this would be the case. You had this internal knowing, and you stayed the course, and you rolled with the punches, and you really cheered yourself on, and you believed in yourself, and you grew and you evolved and you transformed. But you knew that this was going to happen. And there's just so much ease and so much flow with that realization.
Well, Michelle, thank you for all that you brought to this conversation. Uh, I I'm smiling over here. Y'all might be able to hear it through the sound waves. But Michelle, I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing you to this conversation. Uh, the way you show up is mesmerizing. I wish that you continue to bring that out there. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Niiamah. I love these opportunities to connect and to share what it is that we're here to do, because, you've used this terminology, movement, and any good brand, any good business, any good social, cultural, political, environmental business, whatever it is, it has a movement at its core. And I think that you're bringing a lot of beauty to the world in that way, and bringing your light and your energy, but also uplifting others and giving them a platform in which they can share. And the way in which we share ideas is the way in which we make change and growth and evolve. And I think that we're starting to do that on a more universal level now than ever before. And I think that that's growing, and the impact with which we are able to have today in this age is huge. And I don't think we should take that lightly. And I think that the more we can connect, the more we can share ideas, the more we're able to see that evolution, transformation, and growth in the way that we want to see the world embody, and the way in which we want to see the world evolve and grow over time.
Thank you. Just deeply, deeply thank you. Be well.